The grand halls of the Valfar Dominion stretched endlessly, their walls covered in shimmering metal that pulsed with soft blue light. Deep beneath the capital city, hidden in a heavily guarded vault, a legendary relic rested in silence. The cursed blade of Queen Silara. For centuries, the blade had remained untouched, dormant, and forgotten. It was more than a weapon. It was a symbol of power, forged with ancient technology that no Valfar scientist had ever understood. But despite all their efforts, no Valfar warrior had ever been chosen by it. The blade had a mind of its own, a mysterious energy that only responded to the worthy. And for generations, it had remained cold, as if waiting for something, or someone. No one expected that someone to be a human. Rhea Carter adjusted the torn sleeve of her jacket and glared at the force field keeping her locked inside a small cell. The walls hummed softly, reacting to her movement, but she had no way to escape. She had come to the Valfar Dominion as a diplomat, hoping to strengthen relations between humans and the Dominion. But diplomacy had failed. A misunderstanding during a trade meeting had turned into an accusation of trespassing, and before she knew it, she was captured and labeled an intruder. The Valfar were an advanced species, taller and stronger than humans, with sharp eyes that glowed like burning embers. They believed in strength above all else. To them, humanity was small, weak, and unworthy. And now, Rhea was nothing more than entertainment. A deep voice echoed through the halls. "Prisoner, rise." Rhea stood as the cell door slid open. A Valfar guard, towering over her in dark armor, motioned for her to step forward. She clenched her fists but followed without a word. Resistance was useless. For now, the halls led to a massive open arena, filled with thousands of Valfar spectators. The air buzzed with excitement, and massive screens displayed her image above the crowd. Rhea's heart pounded. She had heard of these arenas. The Valfar used them to test warriors in trials of strength. A Valfar noble, dressed in golden robes, stepped forward. His voice boomed across the arena. "This human believes she is our equal," he announced, his sharp teeth visible in an amused grin. "Let us see if she is worthy of our games." Rhea frowned. Games? Then she saw it. At the center of the arena, a golden pedestal rose from the ground. Resting on it was a strange, curved blade, its surface dark and smooth, glowing faintly with shifting blue patterns. The cursed blade of Queen Silara. The crowd hushed. This was no ordinary challenge. The noble smirked. For centuries, no Valfar has been chosen by the blade. Let this human try. If she is not worthy, then she will prove her place beneath us. Rhea swallowed hard. She wasn't sure what was worse, the test or the fact that she had no choice. Two guards forced her forward. She stared at the blade, its glow almost hypnotic. A weapon like this belonged in a museum, not in some twisted game. But something about it felt familiar. Slowly, she reached out. The moment her fingers brushed the hilt, the world shifted. A shockwave of energy erupted from the blade, surging through the air in waves of blue light. The pedestal cracked. The ground trembled. The arena gasped as a ring of pure energy spread outward, forcing the Valfar back. And then, silence. The blade pulsed in her hand, humming with life. The air crackled around her as if the weapon had been waiting for this moment. Then, a whisper echoed in her mind. "You are not of my blood, yet you burn with defiance. I name you my successor." Rhea's breath caught in her throat. She understood. This wasn't just a weapon. It was something more, something alive. Before she could react, the arena exploded into chaos. The Valfar noble's face twisted in shock. "Impossible," he shouted. "A human cannot." A dozen guards rushed forward, their weapons drawn. The noble pointed at Rhea. "Seize her. Take the blade." But Rhea barely heard them. The energy of the blade flowed through her veins, sharpening her senses. Her body felt lighter, her movements faster. Without thinking, she stepped back, just as a Valfar soldier lunged at her. Her hand moved on its own. The blade blocked the attack effortlessly. The crowd gasped. The noble's expression darkened. "This cannot be," he muttered. "The blade must be mistaken." But it wasn't. The cursed blade of Queen Silara had awakened, and it had chosen a human. Rhea tightened her grip. The Valfar might not accept it, but she wasn't going to give up without a fight. The blade hummed, as if in agreement. The true battle had only just begun. Heavy silence filled the arena. The air crackled with strange energy, and every Valfar warrior in the stands stared in shock. The cursed blade of Queen Silara had awakened for a human. Rhea Carter could feel the weapon's power humming in her grip. It wasn't just metal. It was alive, a strange energy flowing through her arm, filling her mind with fragments of forgotten whispers. This was more than just a relic. It was something ancient, something waiting. A sharp voice broke through the stunned silence. "Seize her." The Valfar noble, his golden robes swirling in the wind, pointed straight at Rhea. In an instant, a dozen guards rushed forward, their boots slamming against the arena floor. Rhea had no time to think. The blade moved on its own, guiding her hand as she stepped aside, dodging the first attack with ease. The moment her feet touched the ground, the energy around her shifted, and her body felt lighter, faster. A second guard lunged at her. Without hesitation, she raised the blade. The weapon flashed with blue light, releasing a pulse of energy that sent the soldier stumbling backward. He wasn't harmed, just pushed away, as if the blade refused to hurt. Rhea's eyes widened. It doesn't destroy, it protects. The realization sent a spark of confidence through her. This wasn't just some ancient weapon of war. It was something more, and it had chosen her. The Valfar noble's face twisted in fury. She must not leave this arena. More guards surrounded her now, their weapons glowing with bright energy. They were stronger than her, more experienced, but something deep inside whispered that she was not weak. Rhea took a deep breath. If the blade chose me, then I have to trust it. She gripped the hilt tightly and moved. The power within. The next guard swung his blade. Rhea ducked, her movements faster than before. She felt the blade's energy guiding her steps, her body reacting before she could even think. Another soldier lunged from the side. Rhea turned, twisting the cursed blade in her grip. The moment it touched his weapon, a shockwave erupted, sending him flying backward. The crowd gasped. The noble's expression darkened. He slammed his fist against the armrest of his seat. "This is a disgrace. That blade belongs to us." Rhea could hear the anger in his voice, but she had no time to care. More guards closed in, their glowing weapons forming a circle around her. A voice echoed inside her head, soft yet powerful. "They will never accept you. They fear what you could become." She knew that voice. It was the same whisper she had heard when she first touched the blade. "Who are you?" Rhea asked, her thoughts reaching out. "I was once their queen. The last ruler before they erased my name. I see in you what they could not see in me." Rhea's grip tightened. Queen Silara, the true owner of the blade. She didn't have time to ask more. The guards attacked all at once. But this time, Rhea was ready. She spun on her heel, the blade sweeping in an arc. Blue energy flashed outward, creating a barrier that stopped the guards in their tracks. The moment their weapons touched the barrier, they were pushed back, unable to move forward. The noble rose from his seat, his golden eyes burning with fury. Enough of this. He turned to a group of heavily armored warriors standing near the entrance. "Send in the sentinels." The crowd gasped. Rhea's pulse quickened. She didn't know who the sentinels were, but she could tell from the audience's reaction that they were something far worse than the ordinary soldiers. A moment later, the ground trembled. From the shadows beneath the arena, two massive figures stepped forward. Their armor was sleek, black, and covered in glowing red symbols. Unlike the other Valfar warriors, these beings didn't move like ordinary soldiers. They were precise, calculated, almost mechanical. These are not ordinary warriors, Silara's voice warned in Rhea's mind. They are enhanced, created to obey without question. Rhea tightened her stance, raising the blade. Then I guess it's time to see what this thing can really do. A dangerous escape. The first sentinel charge, its speed unnatural despite its heavy armor. Rhea barely had time to react before it was on her, swinging a weapon that crackled with energy. She dodged just in time, the heat of the attack brushing past her face. But the second sentinel was already moving. They were coordinated. Too fast. Too strong. Rhea jumped backward, but the second sentinel's strike came too quickly. She raised the blade to block, expecting to be thrown off balance. But instead, the energy within the blade surged outward, forming a shockwave so powerful that the sentinels were forced several feet back. The crowd fell silent. The noble froze, his eyes wide with disbelief. No, that power should not be possible. Rhea didn't wait for another attack. The blade's power was unpredictable, but she knew one thing for sure. She couldn't stay here. She turned, racing toward the exit, her heart pounding. The sentinels recovered and pursued, their heavy steps shaking the ground. But as Rhea ran through the arena gates, something strange happened. The walls shifted, glowing with unfamiliar energy. Doors that had been locked suddenly slid open, revealing paths that hadn't been there before. The Dominion is not what it seems, Silara's voice whispered. The blade is showing you the way. Do not stop now. Rhea clenched her jaw. She didn't know where she was going. But one thing was certain. She was no longer just a prisoner. She was the one thing the Valfar had never expected. She was the chosen wielder of their greatest weapon, and she was not going to let them take it back. The sound of heavy footsteps echoed behind Rhea Carter as she sprinted through the twisting corridors of the Valfar stronghold. The walls glowed with soft blue energy, pulsing in strange patterns as if they were alive, reacting to her presence. She didn't know where she was going, but the cursed blade of Queen Silara seemed to guide her. Every time she reached a dead end, a hidden door slid open. Every time a patrol appeared, the walls would shift, revealing a new path. The blade is connected to this place, Rhea realized. It's helping me escape. Behind her, the sentinels were still in pursuit. Their armored boots struck the floor with unrelenting precision, their red glowing eyes locked onto her position. They weren't just warriors. They were machines enhanced with Valfar technology, built to never stop, never question, never fail. Rhea's breath came in sharp gasps, but she pushed forward, gripping the blade tightly. "Where do I go?" she asked silently, hoping Queen Silara's voice would answer. For a moment, there was nothing. Then, "Go down." Rhea skidded to a stop just as the floor beneath her shifted, revealing a circular hatch. Without hesitation, she jumped through. The moment she landed, the hatch sealed shut behind her. The sentinels stopped above, their red eyes scanning, but the passage had vanished. They couldn't follow. Rhea exhaled in relief. She had escaped them. For now. The forgotten chamber. Rhea looked around. She was in a vast underground chamber, unlike anything she had ever seen before. The walls were covered in golden inscriptions, swirling symbols that seemed to glow as she moved closer. This is ancient, she thought. The floor was smooth, reflecting the soft light of the engravings. In the center stood a large stone pedestal, covered in dust, as if it had been untouched for centuries. "Where am I?" she whispered. The blade in her hand pulsed, and Silara's voice returned. "This is the place they wanted to erase from history." Rhea stepped forward, brushing her fingers against the pedestal. At her touch, the engravings lit up, forming patterns that connected to the ceiling, the walls. The entire chamber came alive. A holographic image flickered above the pedestal, revealing a Valfar woman in regal armor. Her piercing eyes seemed to look right at Rhea. "Is that you?" Rhea asked, realizing she was staring at Queen Silara herself. The hologram nodded. You were never meant to find this place. Silara's voice echoed. The Valthar Dominion erased my legacy. They feared what I stood for. Rhea frowned. But why? You were their queen. The hologram flickered. Because I believed in something greater than conquest. I believed in unity, in the strength of those they called weak. The Dominion wanted control, and when I resisted, they took everything from me. My throne, my name, my life. Rhea's fingers tightened around the blade. And this weapon, a gift from an older civilization. Silara explained, not a weapon of war, but a key to something far greater. The Dominion never understood it. They only saw power, and when they could not wield it, they hid it away. Until you came. Rhea took a slow breath. And now, what happens next? The hologram's eyes glowed brighter. Now you must make a choice of destiny. The engravings around the room shifted, forming a new pattern. Rhea felt something stir deep within her chest, as if the very air had changed. The blade chose you for a reason, Rhea Carter, Silara said. It saw in you what it saw in me. Someone who will not bow to power. Someone who will not be controlled. The room dimmed, and the hologram faded slightly. You can leave now, and the Dominion will continue as it always has. Or, Rhea swallowed. Or what? The engravings pulsed. Or you can take the true power of the blade and change everything. Rhea's heartbeat quickened. She thought about everything that had happened, the way the Valthar looked down on humans, the way they mocked her, imprisoned her, and how the noble had tried to take the blade from her, convinced that only his kind deserved it. She thought about how wrong they were. She looked down at the weapon in her hands. It had chosen her, not them. Rhea exhaled. I'm not walking away. The chamber rumbled in response. The blade glowed brighter, and the engravings around her shifted once more. Then be ready, Silara's voice whispered, because the Dominion will never let you go now. They will come for you. But this time, the engravings lifted off the walls, forming a swirl of golden symbols that wrapped around Rhea, flowing into the blade. The energy surged through her, unlocking something deep within her mind. The whispers grew louder. The knowledge of the blade poured into her thoughts, its history, its true potential, and the secrets the Valthar feared most. This time, you will not be alone. Rhea opened her eyes. She understood now. She wasn't just a human who had stumbled upon a powerful weapon. She was the new wielder of something far greater. And the Valthar Dominion had no idea what was coming. A soft glow surrounded Rhea Carter as the ancient energy of the cursed blade flowed into her. The hidden chamber pulsed with golden light, its swirling engravings shifting around her like whispers of a forgotten past. For the first time, she understood. The blade was more than just a weapon. It was a key, a force meant to protect rather than destroy, a power that had been hidden, waiting for the right person. And now it had chosen her. Rhea tightened her grip, feeling the warmth of the energy settle inside her bones. She was no longer just a human prisoner of the Valthar Dominion. She was something more. A distant rumble snapped her back to reality. The chamber shook as if something massive had just landed above. The echoes of hurried footsteps filled the tunnels. The Valthar were coming. A threat from above. Rhea turned toward the only visible exit, a narrow stone passage that led into darkness. She had no idea where it went, but she had no choice. The Dominion would never let her leave with the blade. As she stepped forward, Queen Silara's voice whispered in her mind. They will send their strongest to take back what is mine. You must be ready. Rhea exhaled sharply. Yeah, I figured. She sprinted down the passage, her heartbeat matching the steady hum of the blade in her grip. The walls around her seemed to shift, guiding her path like a living maze. It felt as if the stronghold itself wanted her to escape. Then, a deafening crash erupted behind her. Rhea glanced over her shoulder and froze. The entrance to the chamber had been blasted open, and through the thick dust, they emerge. The Sentinels. But not just two. 5. Their sleek black armor gleamed under the flickering lights, their glowing red eyes locked onto her like hunting machines. Their presence sent a shiver through the air. Rhea's grip on the blade tightened. "You are stronger than you know," Silara's voice whispered. The first sentinel charge, moving impossibly fast for something its size. Rhea reacted on instinct. She raised the blade, and the air around her bent. A wave of blue energy burst outward, striking the sentinel mid-charge. The force sent it skidding backward, but it didn't fall. The others didn't wait. They moved together, attacking from multiple directions. Rhea dove aside, barely avoiding the second strike. Sparks flew as the sentinel's weapons sliced through the stone where she had just stood. They're not ordinary soldiers, she realized. They move like a single mind. They weren't just warriors. They were hunters. But so was she. Rhea focused, feeling the blade's energy shift. It wasn't just reacting to her movements. It was showing her the future. She could see it, the next attack before it even happened. A sentinel lunged. Rhea sidestepped with perfect timing, her blade sweeping upward. The moment the weapons clashed, a pulse of energy erupted, sending the armored warrior flying backward. The others hesitated for a fraction of a second. That was all she needed. With a burst of speed, she slipped past them, dashing toward the next corridor. She ran. The passage twisted and turned, but the walls continued to guide her. The further she went, the more she felt something calling to her, pulling her toward an unknown destination. She could hear the sentinels behind her, their heavy steps relentless. They would not stop. But she wasn't stopping either. Secrets of the vault. After what felt like an eternity, Rhea burst into a new chamber, larger than the last, with towering pillars and golden structures that pulsed with ancient energy. At the center stood a massive door, covered in the same swirling engravings that had guided her before. But as she stepped forward, the blade in her hand flashed brightly, and something shifted in the air. The symbols on the door moved, rearranging themselves into a language she could suddenly understand. "Only the chosen may enter." A deep boom echoed behind her. Rhea whirled around. The sentinels had arrived. They stepped into the chamber, their weapons humming with power. The leader of the group tilted its head slightly, scanning her, then spoke for the first time. "Surrender the blade." Its voice was cold, mechanical, like it wasn't even a person beneath that armor, just a command given form. Rhea wiped sweat from her brow. Yeah, that's not happening. The sentinels took a step closer. She had seconds. Rhea turned back to the massive door, holding up the blade. The engravings reacted instantly, glowing with golden light. The chamber trembled. The sentinels charged. And the door opened. A blinding light flooded the room, swallowing everything in its glow. Rhea jumped through, just as the doors sealed shut behind her. A new beginning. Rhea collapsed to the floor, her breath ragged. The room she had entered was unlike anything she had ever seen. The walls weren't stone but glass-like, showing glimpses of stars, galaxies, entire worlds spinning in the vastness of space. And at the center, floating above a raised platform, was another artifact, shaped like a crown, its energy pulsing in the same rhythm as the blade. The Dominion hid more than just the blade. Silara's voice whispered. Rhea pushed herself to her feet. The sentinels would come. The Valfar would never stop hunting her. But now, she knew the truth. She wasn't just the wielder of the blade. She was the key to something far greater. And for the first time, she wasn't afraid. Rhea Carter stood frozen, her breath shallow as she gazed at the floating artifact before her. The crown pulsed with a golden glow, its light shifting in perfect rhythm with the blade in her hand. She stepped closer, drawn to its presence. The air around it felt thick with energy, humming with a power that seemed to recognize her. This is what the Valfar feared, she realized. They hadn't just hidden Queen Silara's blade. They had hidden her true legacy. Rhea reached out, her fingers inches away from the artifact when a loud boom echoed from behind. She spun around. The massive door that had sealed shut moments ago was now cracking apart, glowing red-hot as something forced its way through. They're here. The sentinels weren't going to stop. Rhea turned back to the crown. She had no time to think, no time to hesitate. She grabbed it. The moment her fingers touched the surface, the entire chamber erupted with energy. Visions of the past. A flash of light blinded Rhea, and suddenly, she was somewhere else. She wasn't in the chamber anymore. She was standing in a great hall, surrounded by Valfar nobles dressed in shimmering robes. At the center of the room, seated on an ornate throne, was a woman in golden armor, her silver eyes burning with defiance. Rhea recognized her instantly. Queen Silura. The room was filled with angry voices, nobles shouting accusations, demanding she surrender. "You defy the Dominion," one of them spat. "You give weapons to lesser races. You betray your own people." Silura's voice was calm but firm. "I give them knowledge. I give them freedom." The nobles murmured in outrage. Another noble, tall and cold-eyed, stepped forward. "Your ideals have no place in the Dominion. You are no longer fit to rule." The vision shifted. Silura was now in chains, standing in the very chamber where Rhea had found the blade. Her armor was gone, replaced by a simple white robe, and yet she still stood tall. The same cold-eyed noble sneered. "Your power ends here." The blade, her blade, was placed before her. "If we cannot wield your cursed weapon," the noble declared, "then no one shall." The crown was taken from her head. And then, the vision shattered. Rhea gasped, snapping back to reality. The truth hit her like a storm. Queen Silura had been betrayed by her own people, not because she was weak, but because she was stronger than them in ways they didn't understand. She had wanted peace. The Valfar had wanted control. And now, centuries later, the Dominion was still afraid of what she represented. The chamber shook violently. The sentinels had broken through. Rhea turned, gripping both the blade and the crown. She wasn't just holding Silura's lost relics. She was holding a forgotten queen's final hope, and she wouldn't let it be lost again. A battle of wills. The sentinels stepped forward, their weapons glowing with deadly energy. The leader pointed directly at Rhea. "Surrender the artifacts. You are not worthy." Rhea exhaled. She wasn't scared anymore. She had seen the past. She knew the truth. And most importantly, she knew what she had to do. She placed the crown on her head. The moment it touched her, a surge of pure energy flooded through her body. The engravings on the walls lit up, responding to her presence. The sentinels paused, their red eyes flickering in confusion. The blade in Rhea's grip hummed, as if recognizing its rightful queen once again. She raised it high, and the chamber answered her call. A pulse of golden energy erupted outward, striking the sentinels and forcing them backward. Their movements became sluggish, their bodies struggling against the force. They had been programmed to fight, but they had never been programmed to fight a queen. The leader sentinel tried to push forward, its servos straining. "This is impossible." Rhea stepped toward them, her voice steady. "You serve a dominion built on lies." The blade's energy pulsed again, and cracks formed in the sentinel's armor. Their once flawless control began to shatter. Rhea could feel it. The power of the blade, the wisdom of the crown. For the first time in centuries, the legacy of Queen Silura was awake. And the Valfar Dominion had no idea what was coming. A queen's choice. The sentinels were defeated, their once imposing figures now kneeling, unable to resist the force that had awakened inside the chamber. Rhea stood before them, breathing hard, the weight of the crown settling onto her head. Silura's voice returned, but this time, it wasn't a whisper. It was strong. "You have reclaimed what was lost. Now you must decide what comes next." The entire stronghold was shaking. Rhea knew the Valfar wouldn't stop. Even if these sentinels had fallen, more would come. She looked up at the swirling symbols in the air, feeling their meaning settle into her heart. She had two choices. She could escape, taking the blade and the crown with her, forever hiding from the Dominion's reach. Or she could stand and fight. Not just for herself, not just for Xylara, but for everyone the Dominion had ever silenced. Rhea lifted her chin, her choice made. "I'm not running," the chamber answered her. The engraving shifted, forming a new symbol, one that had been erased from history, the mark of a true ruler. The walls pulsed with light, and somewhere deep within the stronghold, alarms began to sound. The Dominion knew. They knew what had just happened, and now they were afraid. Rhea tightened her grip on the blade, the crown gleaming atop her head. This fight wasn't over. It was just beginning. The stronghold trembled as alarms blared through the air, their sharp echoes bouncing off the ancient walls. Rhea Carter stood tall in the center of the chamber, gripping Queen Xylara's blade while the ancient crown rested on her head. The golden glow of the engravings around her pulsed in rhythm with her own heartbeat. She had made her choice. She would not run. She would stand and fight. The Sentinels, once unstoppable machines of the Dominion, were now kneeling, struggling against the force radiating from Rhea. The energy of the blade had shaken their programming, making them hesitate for the first time in their existence. But the Valfar Dominion would not hesitate. They knew. They knew what had awoken in the depths of their own stronghold, and they were coming. The sky burns. Rhea turned her gaze upward. Through the cracks in the chamber ceiling, she could see the stars above, and beyond them, the Dominion fleet. A massive Valfar warship loomed overhead, its sleek dark form blocking the light of distant stars. Smaller ships descended from its belly, speeding toward the surface like hunting birds. They weren't waiting. They were already launching their attack. "They won't let me leave this place alive," Rhea thought. But she had no plans to leave empty-handed. The Dominion had hidden Queen Xylara's legacy for too long. Now, the entire galaxy was about to remember her name. The Sentinel's last stand. The leader Sentinel, still struggling against the energy, managed to rise to its feet. Its red eyes flickered as it stared at Rhea. "You should not exist." Rhea tilted her head. "And yet here I am." The Sentinel's fists clenched. "If you do not surrender, the Dominion will destroy you." Rhea smiled. It wasn't a smile of arrogance. It was a smile of understanding. "They already tried," she said, "and they failed." With a single movement, she raised the blade high. The engravings on the walls reacted instantly, glowing brighter than ever before. The golden energy spread across the chamber, moving like a living force. The Sentinels stepped back, their metallic bodies twitching as the power overwhelmed them. Then, the walls shifted. Huge sections of stone moved apart, revealing hidden passages filled with ancient technology. This wasn't just a tomb. It was a fortress, a secret that the Valfar Dominion had tried to erase. And now, it belonged to Rhea, the weapon of a forgotten queen. Rhea didn't have much time. The Valfar forces were already descending. She could hear the whine of approaching ships, the distant sound of heavy footsteps as enemy troops entered the stronghold. She needed to act now. She rushed toward the newly revealed corridor, guided by the engravings. The air inside was thick with dust, untouched for centuries. But she could feel the power humming through the walls, like a machine waiting to wake up. And at the end of the corridor, she found it. A control chamber surrounded by glowing consoles. And at its center, a great machine, built into the stronghold itself. It was massive, its shape unfamiliar but beautiful, a towering construct of golden metal, covered in the same swirling symbols as the blade and crown. She didn't understand what it was, but she knew what it meant. Xylara wasn't just a queen, Rhea realized. She was a warrior. And this is her weapon. The Dominion arrives. A shockwave rattled the walls. Rhea turned just in time to see Valfar soldiers storming into the chamber, their weapons raised. Their silver armor gleamed under the golden light, their sharp, angular helmets hiding their faces. The one leading them stepped forward, his voice cold. "You are trespassing on sacred ground." Rhea raised the blade. "Funny. I was about to say the same thing." The Valthar commander narrowed his glowing eyes. "Surrender the crown. Surrender the blade. And perhaps we will spare you." Rhea laughed. "You don't understand, do you?" she said, stepping backward toward the machine. "This isn't your stronghold anymore." The engravings around her flared to life. The machine behind her shuddered. The commander's eyes widened in alarm. "Stop here." The soldiers opened fire, but before the first shot could hit, the machine awoke. A pulse of energy erupted outward, slamming into the Valthar forces like a tidal wave. The Dominion soldiers were thrown back, their weapons short-circuiting, their armor flickering with disrupted energy fields. For the first time in centuries, Queen Silara's last weapon was active, and Rhea was in control. The Queen returns. The ancient machine's consoles lit up, displaying symbols that Rhea could now read perfectly. It wasn't just a weapon. It was a beacon, a call to every hidden world, every forgotten people, every race the Dominion had ever conquered. Silara had built this stronghold not just to hide her power, but to give others a chance to rise. Rhea pressed her hand against the control panel. The engravings pulsed. A signal shot out into the stars. A message, a warning, a promise. The lost queen has returned. The Dominion's rule is ending. Rhea turned to the fallen Valthar soldiers, their stunned commander struggling to stand. She lowered her blade toward him. "You wanted to erase her," she said, her voice steady. "But all you did was make sure she would rise again." The ground trembled as the beacon's signal spread across the galaxy. And far above, beyond the Dominion's warships, the stars themselves seemed to stir. The fight wasn't over. It was just beginning. The ancient beacon's signal shot across the stars, carrying a message lost for centuries. Planets under the Dominion's rule, hidden resistance groups, and forgotten civilizations heard the call. The Valthar Dominion had buried Queen Silara's legacy. But now, because of Rhea Carter, it had returned. Rhea stood in the heart of the stronghold, her hands firm on the control panel. The golden energy of the ancient machine pulsed around her, responding to her presence. She wasn't just wielding Silara's blade. She was wielding her truth. And the Dominion was afraid. The sky burns. High above, in the dark void of space, the Dominion fleet moved into attack positions. Their warships hovered like giants, ready to crush any resistance. From the largest vessel, Supreme Commander Vadris watched the battle unfold. His silver armor gleamed under the light of his warship's control room, his sharp eyes locked onto the stronghold below. His second-in-command hesitated. "Sir, the signal is spreading faster than we expected." Vadris frowned. "Then destroy it." A squadron of Valthar fighters swooped toward the stronghold, their weapons charging. The air trembled as energy cannons fired, their blasts streaking down toward Rhea's position. But the stronghold had awoken. A golden energy barrier flared to life, absorbing the attacks. The enemy blasts vanished into the shield, leaving the ancient structure untouched. Vadris's eyes narrowed. This is impossible. The battle on the ground. Inside the stronghold, the Dominion soldiers who had entered earlier were struggling. Their weapons malfunctioned, their armor systems failing under the pulse of the stronghold's energy. The leader of the squad, still shaken from Rhea's words, tried to stand. He pointed at her. "You cannot win. The Dominion is eternal." Rhea stepped forward, her grip on the blade tightening. "No empire lasts forever," she said. She raised the sword, and the golden energy flared brighter. The stronghold itself responded, walls shifting, floors pulsing with power. For the first time in history, the Dominion's own soldiers were the ones who felt powerless. Some of them hesitated. A few lowered their weapons, uncertainty in their eyes. They had been told that Queen Silara was a traitor. They had been told that her ideals were dangerous. But now, standing before a human wielding her true power, they felt something else: doubt. And doubt was stronger than fear. The turning tide. Across the galaxy, the signal reached hidden worlds. On a distant planet, a small rebel group intercepted the message. Their leader, a battle-scarred warrior, listened to Rhea's words and turned to his people. The Queen's legacy is real. The fight isn't over. On another world, where Valthar rule had crushed civilizations, the people saw the golden light in the sky. And for the first time in years, they dared to hope. The Dominion had kept them under control by erasing history. But now, history had returned. The final stand. Rhea turned back to the machine's control panel. The beacon was still active, but it wasn't enough. She needed to do more. She needed to send one final message. She took a deep breath and spoke. "This is Rhea Carter," she said, her voice steady. "I am not a queen. I am not a ruler. I am just a human." She glanced at the Valthar soldiers before her. Some still resisted. Others were listening. "But I stand with Queen Silara's legacy," she continued. "I stand with every world that has been silenced by the Dominion." She looked up, knowing her voice was being carried across thousands of systems. "We have been told we are weak." She raised the sword high, the energy of the stronghold pulsing around her. "But I say, we are not." Outside, the sky erupted. Ships that had once served the Dominion suddenly turned. Pilots who had seen the message, soldiers who had realized the truth. One by one, cracks appeared in the Dominion's perfect control. The Dominion falls. Commander Vadris stood frozen as reports flooded in. "Sir, we're losing forces. Several planets have declared open rebellion. The stronghold. We can't break through." Vadris clenched his fists. This was not how it was supposed to be. A single human was undoing centuries of power. His jaw tightened. This isn't over. And in a flash of light, the Dominion fleet retreated. The battle was over. But the war had just begun. The dawn of a new era. Rhea stood at the top of the stronghold, watching the Dominion ships vanish into the sky. She exhaled, feeling the weight of everything she had done. The blade in her hand, the crown on her head. They weren't just relics anymore. They were symbols of a future that had just begun. Behind her, the former Dominion soldiers looked at her not with fear, but with respect. One of them removed his helmet, stepping forward. "What now?" he asked. Rhea looked at the stars, where new fires of rebellion had been lit. She smiled. Now, she turned back to them, the golden glow of Silara's legacy shining behind her. "Now we take back the galaxy." The end, or the beginning. Queen Silara's legacy had been buried. But now it had been awakened, and the Dominion would never silence it again.